If you think you know your neighbors, think you understand the people who smile and wave from their front porches every morning, then the story of Brian Martinez will shatter every assumption you have ever made about trust, safety, and the monsters who hide behind the most respected faces in our communities. Before we dive into this shocking true story that will change how you see everyone around you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. Because what you are about to discover about a 19-year-old golden boy and the predator who destroyed him will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about small-town America. In the sprawling suburbs of Katy, Texas, where manicured lawns stretch endlessly under the relentless September sun, 19-year-old Brian Martinez was the golden boy everyone believed would escape the gravitational pull of small-town mediocrity. With acceptance letters from 3 universities scattered across his bedroom desk, and a skateboard that had carried him through countless evenings of adolescent freedom, Brian represented everything hopeful about growing up in America's heartland. His mother Maria would later tell investigators that her son possessed an almost magnetic quality. Teachers remembered him years after graduation, store clerks knew him by name, and younger kids at the skate park followed him around like devoted disciples. On September 15, 2006, at exactly 6:42 p.m., Brian kissed his mother goodbye, grabbed his worn Element skateboard, and stepped into the golden hour light that painters spend lifetimes trying to capture. He was heading to Katy Park, a 15-minute ride through familiar neighborhoods where children's laughter echoed from backyards, and the smell of barbecue drifted through screen doors. It was supposed to be routine. It was supposed to be safe. Instead, it became the beginning of a mystery so profound that it would consume an entire community for the next 13 years. What happened that evening defied every logical explanation investigators could construct. Brian Martinez simply vanished from the face of the earth, leaving behind only questions that grew more disturbing with each passing day. No witnesses saw him leave the park. No surveillance cameras captured his final moments. Security technology in 2006 suburban Texas was sparse at best, limited to bank parking lots and convenience stores. The skateboard he had carried everywhere for 3 years was never found. His cell phone, a basic flip model that rarely left his pocket, went straight to voicemail after 9 p.m. Its last ping registering near the park's main entrance before disappearing from cellular towers entirely. But perhaps most haunting of all was the complete absence of any trace. No clothing fibers caught on fence wire, no scuff marks suggesting a struggle, no personal belongings scattered by panicked flight. It was as if Brian Martinez had simply decided to stop existing, stepping out of his life with the same casual ease he had shown stepping out of his front door that evening. The impossibility of it gnawed at everyone who knew him, creating a wound in the community's collective psyche that would fester for over a decade. The Martinez family's last normal evening unfolded with the predictable rhythm of suburban routine, until it suddenly, irrevocably didn't. Maria Martinez had prepared Brian's favorite meal, chicken enchiladas with her grandmother's secret mole recipe, expecting him home by 8:30 as always. She had learned to time dinner around his skateboarding sessions, knowing her son's need for those solitary hours rolling through empty parking lots and perfecting tricks that seemed to defy gravity. By 9:15 she was calling his cell phone. By 9:45 she was driving the familiar route to Katy Park, her headlights cutting through the gathering darkness as a cold knot of maternal intuition twisted in her stomach. The park sat empty, except for the soft buzz of fluorescent lights illuminating basketball courts where teenagers sometimes gathered after dark. Brian's usual spot, a series of concrete steps perfect for practicing ollies, showed no sign of recent activity, no scattered pebbles from skateboard wheels, no fresh scuff marks on the concrete edges he had spent months perfecting his technique against. At 11:47 p.m., Maria Martinez made the call that would transform her family from anonymous suburbanites into the faces on missing person flyers that would haunt Katy's bulletin boards for years to come. The dispatcher's voice was professionally calm, asking standard questions that felt surreal in their ordinariness. What was Brian wearing? Had there been any recent arguments? Any history of running away? Maria found herself describing her son to a stranger, 5'9", brown hair that always fell slightly over his right eye. A scar on his chin from a childhood bicycle accident, wearing his Lucky Astros jersey that he had had since middle school. She emphasized that Brian wasn't the type to disappear without explanation, that he was responsible, that he had college plans, that he called if he was going to be late. But as she spoke these words into the phone, they began to sound hollow, even to her own ears. What parent truly knows their teenager's complete inner world? What mother can account for every impulse, every secret, every moment of adolescent rebellion that might lead a young man to simply walk away from everything he had ever known? The initial response was methodical but limited. Officer David Coleman arrived at the Martinez home at 12:23 a.m. His patrol car's headlights briefly illuminating the carefully maintained flower beds that Maria tended every morning before work. Coleman was relatively new to the Katy Police Department, having transferred from Houston PD seeking the slower pace of suburban law enforcement. He filled out the missing person report with practiced efficiency, noting Brian's clean record, his upcoming college enrollment, and the complete absence of any warning signs that might suggest voluntary disappearance. But as Coleman would later admit in internal reports, something about the case felt wrong from the very beginning. The park had been too clean, too empty. In his experience, teenage hangout spots retained traces of recent activity. Discarded candy wrappers, forgotten items, disturbed gravel where bikes and skateboards had been. Katy Park that night felt scrubbed of human presence, as if someone had taken great care to ensure nothing would be left behind to tell Brian Martinez's story. Detective Sarah Coleman had worked missing persons cases for 8 years, but Brian Martinez's disappearance felt different from the moment she stepped into the Katy Police Department's cramped evidence room on September 16, 2006. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she spread Brian's school photos across a metal table that had seen too many similar cases. Yet somehow this one carried a weight that pressed against her chest like humid Texas air before a storm. Coleman's first interviews revealed a young man who existed in multiple worlds: the academic achiever his teachers praised, the skate park leader his younger friends idolized, and the devoted son his family cherished. But as she dug deeper into Brian's social circle, Coleman encountered something that would haunt her investigative instincts for years to come: a wall of protective silence that seemed to grow thicker with each conversation. The skateboarding community in Katy operated like a secret society, bound by unspoken codes that outsiders, especially law enforcement, could never fully penetrate. At Millennium's skate shop on Mason Road, where Brian had worked part-time stocking inventory and helping younger kids choose their first boards, Coleman met with resistance disguised as cooperation. The shop's owner, Mike Rodriguez, answered every question with technically truthful responses that revealed nothing useful. Yes, Brian had worked his scheduled shift on September 14th. No, he hadn't seemed distressed or mentioned any problems. No, there hadn't been any unusual customers or incidents that week. But Rodriguez's eyes never quite met Coleman's gaze, and his fingers drummed nervously against the counter throughout their 20-minute conversation. The younger skaters who hung around the shop scattered like startled birds whenever Coleman approached, their loyalty to Brian manifesting as deep suspicion of anyone wearing a badge. Coleman's canvass of the neighborhood surrounding Katy Park yielded similarly frustrating results. The suburban streets, lined with identical two-story homes housing families who had moved to Katy for its reputation as a safe haven, seemed to have developed collective amnesia about September 15th. Mrs. Henderson, who lived directly across from the park's main entrance and was known for monitoring neighborhood activities from her front porch, claimed to remember nothing unusual about that evening. The Paddles, whose convenience store sat at the intersection Brian would have used to reach the park, recalled no customers matching his description. It was as if Brian Martinez had been systematically erased from every witness memory, leaving Coleman with a growing suspicion that someone had been very deliberate about ensuring no one would remember seeing him that night. The technical limitations of 2006 proved equally frustrating. Security cameras were luxuries most small businesses couldn't afford, and the few traffic cameras in Katy were positioned primarily on major thoroughfares, nowhere near the residential streets Brian would have traveled. Coleman requested Brian's cell phone records, but the technology of flip phones provided only basic location data, tower pings that showed his phone's general vicinity until it went dark. The most sophisticated forensic tools available to the Katy Police Department consisted of basic fingerprint analysis and crime scene photography equipment that had been state-of-the-art in the 1990s. DNA analysis required sending samples to the Texas Department of Public Safety lab in Austin, a process that could take months and required substantial physical evidence that simply didn't exist in Brian's case. Maria Martinez developed rituals that became sacred, checking Brian's cell phone voicemail every morning at 7 a.m., driving past Katy Park each evening after work, stopping at Millennium Skate Shop every Friday to ask if anyone had remembered anything new. The shop's owner, Mike Rodriguez, grew increasingly uncomfortable with these visits, but Maria seemed oblivious to his discomfort, clinging to any thread that connected her to Brian's world. The missing person flyers became Maria's obsession and her curse. She learned to laminate them against Houston's brutal humidity, to use heavy-duty staples that wouldn't surrender to Texas wind, to replace sun-faded copies with fresh ones that bore Brian's smiling face in sharp accusatory clarity. Her car's glove compartment overflowed with flyers featuring different photos: Brian in his graduation cap, Brian mid-kick flip at the skate park, Brian wearing his Lucky Astros jersey. She posted them at grocery stores, gas stations, churches, and community centers throughout Harris County, creating a paper trail of maternal desperation that tracked her expanding search radius as hope and logic battled in her mind. Employees at print shops throughout Katy came to recognize Maria's particular shade of grief, the way her hands trembled slightly when collecting each new batch of flyers, how she insisted on examining every copy for clarity before accepting the order. Brian's younger sister Carmen, aged 14 when he disappeared, grew up in the shadow of an absence that shaped her adolescence more profoundly than his presence ever had. She learned to navigate around her mother's grief, stepping carefully through a house where every surface had become a shrine to her missing brother. Brian's bedroom remained untouched, his skateboard magazines still scattered across the desk, his clothes hanging in the closet like evidence awaiting analysis, his high school diploma propped against the mirror where he had placed it the day after graduation. Carmen developed a strange relationship with her brother's ghost, talking to his empty room about her day, seeking advice from someone who would forever remain 19 while she continued aging. She became hypervigilant about her own safety, never walking alone, always calling her mother with updates about her whereabouts, acutely aware that disappearance was not something that happened to other families in other places, it was something that could happen to her. The Martinez family's social circle gradually contracted, as friends and neighbors grew uncomfortable with their unrelenting grief. Dinner invitations stopped coming, casual conversations at the grocery store became stilted and brief, punctuated by awkward condolences that felt increasingly hollow as months turned to years. Maria's marriage to Brian's father Eduardo couldn't withstand the constant pressure of unresolved loss. He remarried and moved to Austin in 2009, unable to continue living in a house where every corner whispered his missing son's name. Maria refused to sell the house, convinced that Brian might return and need to find them exactly where he had left them. She kept his cell phone number active, paying the monthly bill religiously, just in case he might try to call home. The community that had rallied around Brian's disappearance began to fracture under the weight of unanswered questions. Some neighbors continued to believe that Brian would eventually return, that some reasonable explanation would emerge for his absence. Others began to accept the possibility that he had been the victim of random violence, that his body might never be found, and his killer might never be identified. While Maria Martinez spent sleepless nights wondering what had happened to her son, the man responsible for Brian's disappearance continued his daily routine as one of Katy's most respected community leaders. Reverend Thomas Walsh had been Brian's youth pastor at Katy Community Church, a charismatic leader who had mentored dozens of teenagers through the awkward transition from adolescence to adulthood. His position provided the perfect cover for predatory behavior, allowing him to access vulnerable young people while maintaining the trust and admiration of their families. Walsh understood that successful predation required patience and careful selection of victims. He had spent months studying Brian Martinez, recognizing in the intelligent, articulate teenager exactly the type of young man who could be manipulated through spiritual authority and emotional isolation. Brian was questioning his faith, struggling with doubts about his future, and seeking guidance from adults he respected, making him an ideal target for someone who knew how to exploit religious confusion for personal gain. The grooming process had begun innocuously, with after-church conversations about Brian's college plans, and gradually escalated to private meetings that Walsh described as spiritual mentoring sessions designed to help Brian navigate the challenges of transitioning to adulthood while maintaining his faith. Cell phone records that would eventually be recovered during the investigation revealed a pattern of communication between Walsh and Brian that had intensified dramatically in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. Text messages preserved in archived cellular data showed Walsh gradually isolating Brian from his support systems, while positioning himself as the only adult who truly understood Brian's internal struggles. Walsh had convinced Brian that his doubts about his future, his occasional conflicts with his parents, and his confusion about relationships were signs of spiritual crisis that required intensive private counseling. The messages revealed Walsh's psychological manipulation in devastating detail, how he had used religious authority to normalize inappropriate conversations. Walsh had exploited Brian's trust to create emotional dependency, and had gradually introduced physical contact under the guise of pastoral care that crossed every professional and moral boundary. The prosecution's timeline, constructed from digital evidence and witness interviews conducted with advanced investigative techniques unavailable in 2006, painted a picture of escalating control that culminated in threats when Brian finally began to resist Walsh's advances. Brian had confided to his friend Marcus Thompson that he was planning to report Walsh to church authorities for inappropriate behavior. Marcus, who had felt guilty for 13 years about not taking Brian's concerns more seriously, finally understood why his friend had seemed increasingly withdrawn and anxious in the weeks before his disappearance. Brian had been trapped between his desire to expose Walsh's abuse and his fear of the destruction such revelations would bring to his family's faith community. The recording device found in his backpack suggested that Brian had decided to gather evidence before making his accusations, understanding instinctively that confronting a respected religious authority would require proof that no one could dismiss or rationalize away. The final text message exchange between Walsh and Brian, recovered from archived cellular data, revealed the trap that had lured Brian to his death. Walsh had convinced Brian to meet him at an undisclosed location near Katy Park on September 15, claiming he was ready to confess his inappropriate behavior and seeking Brian's forgiveness before voluntarily stepping down from his pastoral position. The message promised that Walsh would cooperate with any investigation, and would ensure that Brian's family was protected from the scandal that might emerge. It was a masterful manipulation that appealed to Brian's inherent goodness and his desire to handle the situation in a way that would minimize harm to others. Brian had walked into that meeting believing he was helping to resolve a difficult situation quietly and compassionately, never suspecting that Walsh had no intention of confessing to anyone except the teenager he was planning to silence forever. During the 13 years between Brian's disappearance and Walsh's eventual arrest, the predatory pastor had maintained his facade of grief and concern with calculated precision. He had comforted Maria Martinez during her darkest hours, had organized prayer vigils for Brian's safe return, and had established himself as a pillar of support in the Martinez family's nightmare. His performance had been so convincing that Maria had come to rely on him as a source of spiritual strength, viewing him as an answer to her prayers rather than the embodiment of her worst fears. Walsh had used his position within the church to monitor the investigation discreetly, gathering information about leads, evidence, and potential witnesses through conversations with law enforcement officers who attended his services. He had been careful to show appropriate concern without appearing overly interested, maintaining the delicate balance required to avoid suspicion while ensuring he remained informed about any developments that might threaten his safety. The pastor's involvement in Brian's memorial service had been particularly cruel, serving as the spiritual leader who guided the community through their collective grief. While knowing exactly what had happened to the young man they were mourning, Walsh had delivered sermons about God's mysterious ways, about the importance of maintaining faith during times of inexplicable loss, about the comfort that comes from knowing that Brian was in a better place. His words had provided genuine solace to hundreds of congregants who had no way of knowing they were being consoled by the very person who had created their need for comfort. Walsh's psychological profile revealed the sophisticated nature of his predatory behavior. He had spent years perfecting techniques for identifying vulnerable teenagers, exploiting their spiritual needs, and maintaining control through manipulation that combined religious authority with emotional abuse. His crimes against Brian had not been impulsive acts of violence, but the calculated culmination of a grooming process that had taken months to develop and execute. The investigation would eventually reveal that Brian had not been Walsh's only victim, though he appeared to be the only one whose resistance had led to murder. Other young men who had been part of the church youth program during Walsh's tenure came forward after his arrest, describing similar patterns of inappropriate behavior that had been normalized through religious context and enabled by institutional structures that prioritized protecting the church's reputation over ensuring children's safety. Walsh's ability to maintain his facade for 13 years demonstrated the sophisticated nature of predators who exploit positions of religious authority. Understanding that their crimes are protected not only by the trust community's place in spiritual leaders, but also by victims' reluctance to challenge figures who represent divine authority. The psychological manipulation required to abuse someone, while simultaneously comforting their grieving family, revealed depths of cruelty that transcended simple criminal behavior, extending into realms of spiritual and emotional terrorism that left lasting scars on everyone who had trusted him. The discovery of evidence that would eventually expose Walsh had been waiting patiently beneath the Texas earth for over a decade, hidden in a location that suggested careful planning and intimate knowledge of Katie's development patterns. Someone had placed Brian's belongings where they would eventually be found, when construction activity made their discovery inevitable. But not until enough time had passed that physical evidence linking directly to the crime scene would have deteriorated beyond usefulness. The demolition of the Westfield shopping center on Clay Road was supposed to be routine, another casualty of Katie's relentless suburban expansion, where outdated strip malls surrendered to gleaming retail complexes with better parking and more contemporary facades. The shopping center had been abandoned since 2015, its windows boarded with plywood that bore the scars of teenage graffiti and 13 Texas summers. Construction foreman Jake Thompson had overseen dozens of similar demolitions throughout Harris County, but on the morning of March 3, 2019, his crew's excavator struck something that would resurrect a ghost the Martinez family had never stopped mourning. Buried beneath 3 feet of debris, construction waste, and the accumulated sediment of time, lay a backpack so degraded by exposure that it seemed to have merged with the Texas earth itself. The fabric had faded from its original blue to a sickly gray-green, held together more by embedded dirt than its original stitching. Thompson initially mistook it for construction debris, until his shovel revealed the unmistakable outline of a zipper, its metal teeth corroded but still intact. Inside the backpack, wrapped in layers of deteriorated plastic that had somehow protected them from complete destruction, were the artifacts of a life interrupted. Brian Martinez's student identification card, its laminated surface clouded but still legible, stared up at investigators with the same hopeful smile that had graced missing person flyers throughout Katy for over a decade. Skateboard stickers, their adhesive long since failed, lay scattered like confetti celebrating nothing, brands Brian had loved, bands he had listened to, inside jokes shared with friends who had graduated, married, and moved away while he remained forever 19. A house key, still attached to an Astros keychain his grandfather had given him for his 16th birthday, lay tarnished but recognizable against the backpack's deteriorated lining. But it was the fourth item that would transform this discovery from tragic closure into something far more sinister. Nestled in a side pocket, wrapped in multiple layers of plastic, and protected by what appeared to be a hard plastic case, was a small digital recording device that had somehow survived 13 years of Texas weather, construction activity, and the gradual decay of everything around it. Detective Coleman, now a lieutenant with 15 years of experience behind her, arrived at the construction site within 30 minutes of Thompson's call. The passage of time had carved deep lines around her eyes, and Brian Martinez's case had become the professional obsession that defined her career. She had never stopped working the file, never stopped believing that somewhere in Katie's sprawling suburban landscape lay the answers that would bring peace to a family she had watched slowly disintegrate under the weight of unresolved grief. Seeing Brian's belongings laid out on a tarp beside the excavation site felt like encountering a message from the past, evidence that had been waiting patiently for the right moment to resurface. The recording device, a model she didn't immediately recognize, appeared to be some type of digital voice recorder, popular in the mid-2000s, the kind journalism students used for interviews or musicians used to capture song ideas. Its presence in Brian's backpack suggested premeditation that chilled Coleman to her core. Had Brian been planning to record something the night he disappeared? Had he suspected he might be walking into danger? The chain of custody protocols Coleman followed that afternoon would later prove crucial to the case's resolution. Every item was photographed in situ before removal, the exact Jeep's coordinates of the discovery site were recorded, and the construction crew was interviewed individually about their actions that morning. The recording device was handled with forensic gloves and immediately sealed in an evidence bag. Though Coleman knew that after 13 years of exposure, the chances of recovering usable audio were slim at best, the Texas Deep's crime lab would need weeks to analyze the device, assuming its internal memory had survived the environmental damage. As Coleman drove back to the station with Brian's belongings secured in her vehicle, she couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was not coincidental, that someone had placed these items in that specific location, knowing that eventually Katie's development boom would unearth them when the time was right. 3 weeks after the backpack's discovery, Coleman received a call that would vindicate 13 years of obsessive investigation. Dr. Jennifer Huang from the Texas Department of Public Safety's Digital Forensics Unit spoke with the measured excitement of a scientist who had just witnessed something extraordinary. The recording device, a 2005 Sony IP320 digital voice recorder, had suffered extensive water damage and circuit corrosion, but its flash memory chip had been protected by the device's internal casing, just enough to preserve fragments of its final recording session. Using audio enhancement software that hadn't existed in 2006, Dr. Huang's team had managed to extract nearly 4 minutes of fragmented audio from the night Brian Martinez disappeared. The quality was poor, punctuated by static and distorted by water damage, but sophisticated noise reduction algorithms had isolated human voices speaking in urgent, increasingly agitated tones. Coleman drove to Austin that afternoon, her hands gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity as she fought Houston traffic and her own mounting anticipation. The DP's lab occupied a sterile government building that smelled of industrial carpet and fluorescent lighting, but Dr. Huang's small office felt like a shrine to technological resurrection. Multiple computer monitors displayed audio waveforms that resembled the heartbeat readouts Coleman had seen in hospital intensive care units. The actual recording, when Dr. Huang finally played it through high-quality speakers, transported Coleman back to September 15, 2006, to a moment frozen in digital amber that no one was supposed to hear. The first voice was unmistakably Brian's, nervous, young, speaking in the slightly elevated tone teenagers used when trying to sound more confident than they felt. He was asking questions about something, though the specific words were lost to static corruption. But what made Coleman's blood run cold was the response, a male voice, significantly older than Brian's, speaking with an authority that seemed to carry both familiarity and subtle menace. The conversation continued for approximately 90 seconds before Brian's voice grew more agitated, his words overlapping with the older man's in what sounded like an argument or desperate negotiation. Dr. Huang had isolated specific phrases that emerged clearly from the static. Brian saying "you promised," the older voice responding with what sounded like "no one has to know," and then a section of audio so distorted by what appeared to be physical movement that individual words became impossible to distinguish. But in the final 30 seconds of the recording, just before the device apparently stopped functioning, both voices became crystal clear for one devastating moment. Brian was pleading, his voice breaking with the kind of terror that reached across 13 years to grab Coleman by the throat, and the other voice responding with calm that was more terrifying than any scream. The name that emerged from the static-filled silence of Dr. Huang's laboratory hit Coleman like a physical blow. Reverend Thomas Walsh, the youth pastor who had spent 13 years comforting the Martinez family through their darkest hours, had just been identified as the voice on Brian's final recording. Coleman stared at the audio waveform display as the implications crashed over her in waves of horrified understanding. Walsh had been there the night Brian disappeared. Walsh had been the last person to speak with him, and Walsh had spent over a decade lying to everyone, including the grieving mother he had held while she sobbed. Coleman drove back to Katy in a state of focused rage that made the Houston traffic fade into background noise, her mind racing through every interaction she had witnessed between Walsh and the Martinez family, every prayer vigil he had led, every moment of comfort he had provided while knowing exactly what had happened to Brian. The psychological cruelty of it was staggering, that a man could murder a teenager, then spend 13 years consoling the victim's family, while monitoring the investigation and maintaining his position as a respected community leader. Pulling Walsh's original interview transcripts from the case file, Coleman reread them with the bitter clarity that comes from knowing the ending to a story you thought you understood. Walsh had been careful in his responses, helpful but not overly eager, grieving but not dramatically so. He had never volunteered information about private conversations with Brian, never mentioned meeting with him outside of organized church activities, never suggested any knowledge of Brian's plans for September 15th beyond the general statement that Brian often skateboarded in the evenings. Coleman realized that Walsh had been hiding in plain sight for 13 years, camouflaged by his position of religious authority and his apparent genuine concern for the Martinez family's suffering. The recording device suggested that Brian had suspected something was wrong, that he had been smart enough to document what might be his final conversation, but not experienced enough to avoid walking into a trap that would cost him everything. The arrest warrant application Coleman submitted that evening detailed not just the audio evidence, but a pattern of behavior that had been invisible until viewed through the lens of Walsh's guilt. His consistent presence at family gatherings, his detailed knowledge of the investigation's progress, his ability to provide comfort that seemed almost too perfectly calibrated to Maria Martinez's emotional needs. The document painted a picture of a predator who had used his victim's murder as an opportunity to insert himself deeper into the family structure, ensuring his continued access to information about the case. Harris County District Attorney Rebecca Chen reviewed the evidence package at 11:30 p.m. that same night, understanding immediately that this case would reshape how law enforcement approached investigations involving religious institutions. The audio recording, combined with digital evidence recovered from archived cell phone records, provided probable cause for Walsh's arrest. But Chen knew that prosecuting a beloved community leader would require more than technical evidence. It would demand a complete reconstruction of 13 years of lies. The search warrant for Walsh's residence was executed at dawn on April 12, 2019, as the 47-year-old pastor prepared for his morning jog through the Katy Mills subdivision. Walsh answered his front door wearing Nike running shorts and a faded Katy Community Church t-shirt from a youth camp he had organized in 2005, the same summer he had first met Brian Martinez. His face registered confusion, then concern, then something that Coleman would later describe as the look of a man who had been waiting 13 years for this moment to arrive. Walsh offered no resistance, asked no questions about the charges, and maintained an unsettling calm that contrasted sharply with the magnitude of what he was being accused of. As Coleman placed handcuffs on the wrists that had blessed communion bread and baptized teenagers, Walsh's only words were a request to call his wife before the news broke publicly. The search of Walsh's home revealed a carefully maintained facade of suburban respectability, but hidden within his computer hard drives, investigators discovered digital evidence that exposed the true nature of his relationship with Brian Martinez. Deleted text messages recovered through advanced forensic techniques showed months of psychological manipulation disguised as spiritual guidance. Walsh had used his position as youth pastor to isolate Brian from his support systems, while creating emotional dependency that made the teenager increasingly vulnerable to abuse. The messages revealed Walsh's sophisticated understanding of how to exploit religious authority to normalize inappropriate behavior, while ensuring his victims' silence through shame, guilt, and fear of destroying their family's faith community. Cell phone location data archived by service providers showed that Walsh had been in the vicinity of Katy Park on September 15, 2006, contradicting his original statement that he had been home with his family that evening. The data also revealed multiple instances when Walsh's phone had pinged towers near Brian's location during the weeks leading up to his disappearance, suggesting a pattern of surveillance that had gone undetected by the original investigation. Digital forensics experts recovered browser history from Walsh's personal computer that showed extensive research into missing person investigation techniques, evidence disposal methods, and cellular tracking capabilities, indicating that Walsh had been actively studying how to avoid detection while planning and executing his crime. The sophistication of his preparation suggested that Brian's murder had not been an impulsive act, but the calculated result of months of planning and manipulation. Interviews with other former youth group members, conducted after Walsh's arrest, revealed a pattern of inappropriate behavior that had been normalized through religious context and enabled by institutional structures that prioritized protecting the church's reputation over ensuring children's safety. Several young men described similar grooming tactics that Walsh had employed, though none had escalated to the level of violence that had characterized his interaction with Brian. The investigation also uncovered evidence that Walsh had used his position within the church to monitor the progress of Brian's case over the years, gathering information about leads, evidence, and potential witnesses through conversations with law enforcement officers who attended his services. He had been careful to show appropriate concern without appearing overly interested, maintaining the delicate balance required to avoid suspicion while ensuring he remained informed about any developments that might threaten his safety. Perhaps most disturbing was the discovery of detailed journals in which Walsh had documented his psychological manipulation of the Martinez family, describing Maria Martinez's grief with clinical detachment, while recording his own thoughts about how to maintain her trust and dependence. The journals revealed that Walsh's comfort had been a calculated performance designed to ensure the family's continued vulnerability, while protecting himself from suspicion. The evidence painted a picture of predatory behavior so sophisticated and cruel that it transcended simple criminal activity, extending into realms of psychological terrorism that had systematically destroyed multiple lives, while allowing the perpetrator to maintain his position as a pillar of the community. The arrest sent shockwaves through Katy that would continue reverberating long after Walsh was locked away. The Katy Community Church congregation learned of their pastor's arrest through local news broadcasts that interrupted regular programming throughout Harris County. Pastor Walsh had led the church for 18 years, transforming it from a struggling rural chapel into a thriving suburban ministry with over 800 active members. He had officiated at countless weddings, comforted families through deaths and divorces, and mentored hundreds of young people through youth programs that were considered models throughout the Southern Baptist Convention. Congregants who had trusted Walsh with their deepest spiritual struggles found themselves questioning not only his guilt or innocence, but their own ability to recognize evil when it sat across from them in coffee shops, shared their prayer requests, and offered guidance during their most vulnerable moments. The church board called an emergency meeting that lasted until nearly midnight, as longtime members grappled with the devastating possibility that their spiritual leader had been living a double life that included the murder of a teenager they had all prayed for. Maria Martinez learned of Walsh's arrest through a phone call from Detective Coleman that arrived while she was preparing for another day of searching. 13 years later, she still took vacation days from her job at the school district to distribute flyers and follow up on potential leads that usually led nowhere. Coleman's voice carried a weight that Maria had learned to recognize over the years. But this time it was different. This time it was not the familiar disappointment of another dead end, but something that made Maria's legs give out, forcing her to sit heavily on Brian's bed. As Coleman explained that they had arrested the man who had spent years holding her while she cried, who had led prayer circles for Brian's safe return, who had become like family during the darkest period of her life, the betrayal felt more devastating than Brian's original disappearance, because it retroactively poisoned every moment of comfort Walsh had provided, every prayer he had offered, every reassurance he had given about God's plan and Brian's ultimate safety. The community's reaction revealed the fault lines that exist in any small town when the unthinkable happens to someone everyone thought they knew. Walsh had taught Sunday school to children who were now adults with families of their own. He had counseled married couples through difficulties that required absolute trust and confidentiality. He had organized charity drives, led youth trips to summer camps, and delivered sermons about forgiveness and redemption that had guided congregants through their own moral struggles. Neighbors who lived near Walsh described him as the perfect pastor, available during emergencies, genuinely interested in people's lives, never judgmental despite his deeply held religious convictions. The cognitive dissonance between the man they thought they knew and the monster investigators were describing created a psychological crisis that rippled through Katie's religious community. Some church members insisted the charges were a mistake, that Walsh was being framed, or that the evidence had been misinterpreted. Others began remembering interactions with Walsh through a darker lens, wondering if signs had been present all along that they had been too trusting or naive to recognize. Parents whose children had participated in youth programs led by Walsh found themselves reviewing years of interactions, searching for warning signs they might have missed. Conversations that seemed innocent at the time, but took on sinister meanings when viewed through the lens of criminal charges. The Harris County District Attorney's Office unsealed court documents on May 7, 2019, that revealed a predatory relationship more sophisticated and disturbing than anyone had imagined. Walsh had begun grooming Brian Martinez in the spring of 2006, using his position as youth pastor to gain unprecedented access to a vulnerable teenager who was struggling with questions about sexuality and faith that he felt unable to discuss with his family. According to the prosecution's case file, Walsh had identified Brian as an ideal target, intelligent enough to keep secrets, isolated enough to crave adult attention, and trusting enough to believe that a pastor's guidance represented divine will rather than human manipulation. The grooming had been methodical and patient, beginning with after-church conversations about Brian's college plans, and gradually escalating to private meetings that Walsh described as spiritual mentoring sessions, designed to help Brian navigate the challenges of transitioning to adulthood while maintaining his faith. Cell phone records recovered during the investigation revealed a pattern of communication between Walsh and Brian that had intensified dramatically in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. Text messages preserved in archived cellular data showed Walsh gradually isolating Brian from his support systems, while positioning himself as the only adult who truly understood Brian's internal struggles. Walsh had convinced Brian that his doubts about his future, his occasional conflicts with his parents, and his confusion about relationships were signs of spiritual crisis that required intensive private counseling. The messages revealed Walsh's psychological manipulation in devastating detail, how he had used religious authority to normalize inappropriate conversations, how he had exploited Brian's trust to create emotional dependency, and how he had gradually introduced physical contact under the guise of pastoral care that crossed every professional and moral boundary. The prosecution's timeline, constructed from digital evidence and witness interviews conducted with advanced investigative techniques unavailable in 2006, painted a picture of escalating control that culminated in threats when Brian finally began to resist Walsh's advances. Brian had confided to his friend Marcus Thompson, now 32 and living in Dallas, that he was planning to report Walsh to church authorities for inappropriate behavior. Marcus, who had felt guilty for 13 years about not taking Brian's concerns more seriously, finally understood why his friend had seemed increasingly withdrawn and anxious in the weeks before his disappearance. Brian had been trapped between his desire to expose Walsh's abuse and his fear of the destruction such revelations would bring to his family's faith community. The final text message exchange between Walsh and Brian, recovered from archived cellular data, revealed the trap that had lured Brian to his death. Walsh had convinced Brian to meet him at an undisclosed location near Katy Park on September 15, claiming he was ready to confess his inappropriate behavior and seeking Brian's forgiveness before voluntarily stepping down from his pastoral position. The message promised that Walsh would cooperate with any investigation and would ensure that Brian's family was protected from the scandal that might emerge. It was a masterful manipulation that appealed to Brian's inherent goodness and his desire to handle the situation in a way that would minimize harm to others. Brian had walked into that meeting believing he was helping to resolve a difficult situation quietly and compassionately, never suspecting that Walsh had no intention of confessing to anyone except the teenager he was planning to silence forever. The revelation that their beloved pastor had been a calculating predator sent shockwaves through the Katy religious community that would continue reverberating for years, as families struggled to understand how they had been deceived by someone they had trusted with their most sacred beliefs and their children's spiritual development. The plea negotiations took place in a windowless conference room on the third floor of the Harris County Criminal Justice Center, where fluorescent lights cast everything in the pallid glow of institutional justice. Thomas Walsh sat beside his court-appointed attorney, wearing the orange jumpsuit that had replaced his pastoral robes, his hands folded in a posture that might have looked prayerful, if not for the shackles around his wrists. District Attorney Rebecca Chen had seen hardened criminals break under pressure, but Walsh's demeanor during negotiations was unlike anything in her 20-year career. He spoke about Brian Martinez's murder with the same measured tone he had once used to deliver sermons about forgiveness and redemption, as if describing theological concepts rather than confessing to acts that had destroyed multiple families. Walsh agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for avoiding the death penalty, but his confession revealed details that Chen wished she could unhear. According to Walsh's statement, given in the presence of his attorney and recorded for use in victim impact proceedings, the meeting with Brian on September 15, 2006, had been intended as a final attempt to ensure the teenager's silence through intimidation rather than violence. Walsh had convinced Brian to meet him in a secluded area behind the abandoned Texaco station on Clay Road, approximately 2 miles from Katy Park, under the pretense of having a private conversation about Walsh's resignation from the church. Brian had arrived carrying his skateboard and the recording device, which Walsh claimed he didn't notice until Brian activated it mid-conversation. When Walsh realized he was being recorded, the carefully planned intimidation session escalated into violence that Walsh described with clinical detachment, as if reporting on events that had happened to someone else. He had struck Brian with a tire iron he kept in his vehicle for self-defense, initially intending only to disable him long enough to destroy the recording. But Brian had fought back with desperate strength, and Walsh found himself hitting him repeatedly until the teenager stopped moving entirely. Walsh then disposed of Brian's body in a location he described only as a deep water source where it would never be found, before carefully cleaning the crime scene and disposing of evidence in multiple locations throughout Harris County. The confession revealed the sophisticated nature of Walsh's planning and the cold calculation that had guided every aspect of his crime. He had spent weeks studying Brian's routines, identifying the perfect location for their final meeting, and preparing explanations for any potential witnesses who might question his whereabouts that evening. Walsh had even arranged for his wife to be visiting her sister in Dallas, ensuring that he would have no alibi that could be easily verified, but also no witness to contradict whatever story he chose to tell. Perhaps most chilling was Walsh's description of the hours immediately following Brian's murder. He had returned home, showered, and prepared for the next day's church services as if nothing had happened. When Maria Martinez called the following evening to ask if he had seen Brian, Walsh had feigned concern and offered to help organize search efforts. His performance had been so convincing that even experienced investigators had never suspected his involvement in the very crime they were investigating. Walsh's confession also revealed that he had disposed of Brian's skateboard and cell phone in separate locations miles apart from each other and from the body. The skateboard had been thrown into a construction dumpster that was emptied the following morning, ensuring its destruction. The cell phone had been disassembled, with its component parts scattered across multiple waste sites throughout the Houston metropolitan area. Walsh's attention to evidence disposal demonstrated a level of criminal sophistication that contradicted his claims that Brian's death had been unplanned. The digital recording device that Brian had carried to their meeting had been damaged during the struggle, but not destroyed. Walsh had assumed it was broken beyond repair, and had buried it along with Brian's backpack in the location where construction crews would eventually discover it 13 years later. His decision to bury the evidence, rather than destroy it completely, would prove to be the mistake that ultimately led to his arrest. Maria Martinez was offered the opportunity to read Walsh's full confession before his sentencing hearing, but she declined, telling Chen that she had already learned everything she needed to know about the man who had spent 13 years lying to her face while pretending to share her grief. The revelation that Walsh's comfort had been a calculated performance designed to monitor the investigation's progress and ensure his own safety felt more violating than his original crime. The sentencing hearing itself became a study in the inadequacy of legal language to capture moral catastrophe. Walsh received 25 years without possibility of parole, a sentence that felt simultaneously too harsh and too lenient to everyone present in the courtroom. Maria's victim impact statement, delivered in a voice that seemed to have aged decades since Brian's disappearance, focused not on Walsh's crime, but on the secondary trauma of discovering that her son's killer had comforted her while she planned his memorial service. The courtroom was packed with church members who had come to support the Martinez family, but their presence felt more like bearing witness to collective shame than seeking justice. Former congregants spoke in hushed voices about their own children who had been mentored by Walsh, wondering what signs they might have missed, what conversations they should have had, what questions they should have asked. Carmen Martinez, now 27 and a social worker specializing in child advocacy, delivered a statement that captured the unique agony of growing up in the shadow of an unsolved crime that was now revealed to have been perpetrated by someone who had pretended to care about her family's healing. She described watching her mother trust Walsh completely, seeing him as an answer to prayers rather than the embodiment of her worst nightmares. The revelation that Walsh's comfort had been a calculated performance designed to monitor the investigation's progress and ensure his own safety felt more violating than his original crime. Judge Patricia Moore's closing remarks acknowledged what everyone in the courtroom understood but couldn't articulate, that Walsh's sentence represented the legal system's best attempt to address a crime that extended far beyond Brian's murder to encompass the systematic destruction of a family's faith in human goodness and their ability to distinguish safety from danger. 25 years seemed both monumentally significant and utterly insufficient when measured against the lifetime of grief Maria Martinez would carry. The childhood Carmen had lost to hypervigilance and fear, and the community's shattered confidence in their ability to protect their children from predators who wore collars instead of masks. The case had exposed fundamental weaknesses in how religious institutions handle allegations of abuse, and how communities respond when their most trusted leaders betray that trust. Walsh's final statement to the court was brief and devoid of the remorse that victims' families typically seek. He acknowledged his guilt, but framed his actions as a momentary lapse in judgment rather than the culmination of months of predatory behavior. His inability or unwillingness to accept full responsibility for the psychological terrorism he had inflicted on the Martinez family through 13 years of false comfort added another layer of cruelty to crimes that had already transcended normal categories of human evil. The gavel that ended Walsh's sentencing hearing marked the legal conclusion of a case that had consumed over a decade of investigative resources and emotional energy. But for the Martinez family and the broader Katy community, the real healing process was only beginning, as they grappled with questions about trust, authority, and the capacity of human beings to hide monstrous behavior behind facades of respectability and religious devotion. The ripple effects of Brian Martinez's murder and Thomas Walsh's arrest transformed investigative protocols throughout Harris County in ways that would have been unimaginable in 2006. Detective Coleman, promoted to Lieutenant Coleman by 2020, spearheaded the creation of new guidelines requiring law enforcement to examine religious and educational institutions with the same scrutiny traditionally reserved for known criminal organizations when investigating crimes involving minors. The Martinez case became required reading at the Texas Law Enforcement Academy, used to train new investigators about the psychological profiles of predators who exploit positions of trust and authority. Perhaps most significantly, the case led to the establishment of specialized units dedicated to cold case investigations involving missing persons under 25. Recognizing that traditional investigative approaches often failed to account for the unique vulnerabilities of young victims and the sophisticated manipulation tactics employed by their predators, Maria Martinez channeled her grief into advocacy work that would honor Brian's memory, while protecting other families from experiencing her nightmare. She worked with state legislators to pass Brian's law in 2021, requiring mandatory background checks and psychological evaluations for all religious youth workers throughout Texas, regardless of denominational affiliation. The law also established funding for advanced forensic technology in smaller police departments, ensuring that communities like Katy would have access to the digital investigation tools that might have solved Brian's case years earlier. Maria's testimony before the Texas legislature was broadcast statewide, her voice steady but weighted with accumulated sorrow, as she described watching her son's killer comfort her through 13 years of false grief. Her advocacy work provided a sense of purpose that therapy and time had been unable to deliver, transforming her personal tragedy into systemic change that might prevent other predators from exploiting the trust that religious communities place in their leaders. The Katy Community Church never recovered from the revelation that their beloved pastor had been a murderer hiding among them for nearly 2 decades. Attendance dwindled as members struggled with questions about their own judgment, their children's safety, and their faith in institutions they had trusted without reservation. The church building was eventually sold to a developer and converted into a community center, as if physical transformation might somehow cleanse the spiritual contamination that Walsh's crimes had introduced. Former congregants scattered to other churches throughout the Houston metropolitan area, carrying with them a hard-earned wariness about charismatic leaders and too easy answers to complex spiritual questions. Some lost their faith entirely, unable to reconcile their belief in divine protection with the reality that evil had flourished in their sanctuary for years, while they unknowingly enabled it through their trust and admiration. Carmen Martinez, now working as a victim's advocate for the Harris County District Attorney's Office, speaks regularly at conferences about recognizing predatory behavior in trusted institutions. Her presentations focus on the unique challenges faced by families whose tragedies are compounded by institutional betrayal, and her work has influenced policy changes in how law enforcement approaches cases involving religious or educational figures. She carries Brian's memory into courtrooms where other families seek justice for crimes that echo her own loss, finding purpose in ensuring that victims' voices are heard, even when those victims can no longer speak for themselves. The skateboard Brian never came home to retrieve sits in Carmen's office, not as a memorial, but as a reminder that the most ordinary moments, a teenager grabbing his board for an evening skate session, can become the pivot points around which entire lives shift from hope to heartbreak. The digital forensics techniques that made solving Brian's case possible continued to evolve, with artificial intelligence and machine learning applications being developed specifically for cold case investigations. The Martinez case became a model for how archived cellular data and audio enhancement technology could be used to extract evidence from sources that had been considered worthless using older investigative methods. Law enforcement agencies throughout Texas began implementing protocols for preserving digital evidence, with an understanding that technology available in the future might be able to extract useful information from sources that seemed completely corrupted or destroyed. The case also highlighted the importance of maintaining detailed case files and evidence storage procedures that could support investigations spanning multiple decades. The impact of Walsh's crimes extended beyond criminal justice to influence academic research into predatory behavior and institutional responses to child safety concerns. Universities began studying the Walsh case as an example of how individuals could exploit positions of trust to access victims, while examining the systematic failures that had allowed his crimes to continue undetected for decades. Child protection organizations used the Martinez case to develop training programs for parents and community leaders about recognizing grooming behavior and responding appropriately to children's reports of inappropriate conduct by trusted adults. The case became a cautionary tale about the dangers of placing absolute trust in religious or educational authorities without implementing adequate oversight and accountability measures. The documentary film about Brian's case, produced by an independent filmmaker, won several awards at film festivals and was broadcast on national television, bringing attention to cold case investigations and the importance of maintaining hope, even when cases seem impossible to solve. The film featured interviews with Maria Martinez, Detective Coleman, and several former church members who had gradually recognized warning signs they had missed or dismissed. The basement evidence room where Brian's case file had been stored for over a decade was renovated and expanded to accommodate the growing number of cold cases being actively investigated using modern forensic techniques. The Martinez case had demonstrated that evidence preservation and persistence could yield results, even after traditional investigative methods had been exhausted, inspiring renewed efforts to solve other long-dormant cases. Educational institutions throughout Texas implemented new policies for screening employees who work with minors, including requirements for psychological evaluations, criminal background checks, and ongoing monitoring of interactions between adults and children. The Walsh case had shown that predators often seek positions that provide access to vulnerable young people, while offering protection through community respect and institutional authority. The Texas Department of Public Safety created a specialized unit for investigating crimes involving religious institutions, recognizing that such cases required investigators trained to understand the unique psychological and social dynamics that enable predatory behavior within faith communities. The unit developed protocols for overcoming the resistance and denial that often characterize institutional responses to allegations of abuse. Maria Martinez's annual memorial walks in Brian's honor became community events that brought together families affected by violent crime, child advocates, and law enforcement officers committed to solving cold cases. The walks served